On the night of her wedding, a young bride enters her bedroom. Her skin is pale, her hands are ice cold, and a heavy stench of decay fills the air. Suddenly, her face violently contorts, and she lunges forward with unnatural, terrifying strength. But the possessed bride ignores her vulnerable new husband entirely. She storms out of the room, tracks down her powerful father-in-law, the wealthy landowner or zamindar of the village, and brutally strangles him to death. To understand why a spirit possessed her in the first place, we have to look at what happened earlier that evening. Her travel party was delayed on the river, causing her to miss the highly specific, auspicious hour set for her marriage ceremony. In this region, missing that precise window of time carries a severe social and religious taboo. A bride who misses her wedding hour is labeled Lagna Brashta. The punishment to cleanse this status is bizarre. To proceed with the marriage, the powerful zamindar forced his new daughter-in-law to go to the edge of the village and take a mandatory midnight dip in a body of water locally known as the Bodubi, literally the bride drowning lake. Why would a village hold on to such a highly specific, dangerous tradition? Punishing a bride with a midnight swim in a haunted lake just for being a few minutes late defies basic logic. Bizarre religious edicts rarely materialize from divine instruction. They are engineered by people in power to manage a crisis, control a narrative, and bury the evidence of their own actions. The morning after the zamindar's brutal murder, the village is in chaos. But one person isn't mourning. Gangadhar, a seemingly random boatman, is found openly celebrating the gruesome death. The corrupt village priest immediately recognizes the boatman. He knows exactly who this man is, and more importantly, he knows the history that binds them both to the zamindar's sudden death. Tracing the timeline back to the previous evening reveals exactly why the wedding party was late. Gangadhar was the man rowing their boat. While mid-river, he deliberately threw his own oars into the water, stranding the bride in the current. This delay was a calculated human action. Gangadhar intentionally stalled the boat to guarantee the bride would miss the wedding deadline and trigger the Lagnabrashta status. Gangadhar transformed the zamindar's own oppressive religious rules into a lethal weapon. He orchestrated a confrontation that the wealthy landowner never saw coming. We have to jump back 30 years to see how that rule was created. As a younger man, the zamindar employed a deeply impoverished maid named Bindu. The economic power dynamic between them was absolute. The zamindar sexually exploited Bindu, resulting in a pregnancy. To keep her quiet and compliant, he promised to marry her. But on the day of the promised wedding, the zamindar simply didn't show up. He abandoned Bindu to go watch a local dancer instead, leaving her pregnant out of wedlock and facing total societal ruin. Facing permanent exile and crushing shame, Bindu tied a heavy pitcher around her neck, walked into the large village lake, and drowned herself. Her death created an immediate crisis for the zamindar. If the local peasants discovered he directly drove a young woman to suicide, they would violently riot and tear his estate apart. He needed a way to explain away the body in the lake without taking the blame. So he colluded with the village priest to invent a completely fabricated religious mandate. They publicly decreed that any bride who misses her wedding hour must immediately bathe in that exact lake. This new mandate successfully scrubbed the zamindar's involvement from the record, turning a suicide driven by abuse into a tragic religious obligation. The untouchable, ancient superstition known as Lagna Brashta was a localized lie designed specifically to cover up a rich man's crime against a poor woman. Back in the present timeline, Gangadhar finally reveals his true identity. He is Bindu's grieving brother. He spent 3 decades watching the zamindar live comfortably, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Gangadhar knew he could never touch the zamindar physically. The man was too wealthy and heavily guarded by armed men. To get justice, Gangadhar had to weaponize the zamindar's own fake religion. Look at this flowchart. The zamindar sits secure in the center, insulated by a thick barrier of physical guards and wealth. By forcing the new daughter-in-law to take a midnight dip in the lake, Gangadhar provided his sister's trapped spirit with a physical vessel. That vessel simply walked right past the guards and carried the threat directly into the inner sanctum. The fake religious role created the exact fatal vulnerability needed for the assassination. The zamindar built the door to hide his crime, and his victim's brother simply pushed someone through it. The zamindar's son, Mahendra, finally learns the horrifying truth about his father's actions. Rather than executing the boatman for the assassination, Mahendra permanently banishes the corrupt priest who helped author the lie. Monsters in folklore are usually born from the very real atrocities of the powerful. Unexamined superstitions are often just historical crimes, waiting quietly for their karmic revenge.